So different animals that come to mind when you think of the American West, that would be like a coyote or wolves, mule deer, moose, big bull elk, anything you name it. But there's one animal that really stands out over any of them, so iconic for the West, and that is the American bison. They're so interesting, such a big giant animal that seems, and a lot of tourists fall into this trap, but they seem so docile, and then somebody falls victim to just the crazy aggression that a bison can have. But they are so interesting to paint, so fun, so difficult in some ways because of their matted texture fur. So I'm going to take you into the journey how I did this painting, one of probably my favorite bison painting to date. Alright, so let's get started. So just to start any painting, they're always the same for me, or at least for the most part. I'm going in here, I'm doing a basic line drawing with my paintbrush. I'm not one of those artists that's gridding everything off. I guess maybe I should, but to me, this is the most fun part, is laying it out and trying to figure out how it's going to lay out with just the paintbrush. Um, so I'm starting to add some color here. One of the main things I wanted to have uh, like a dust storm almost, just from the bison running through the dry ground. But I wanted to have some pop of color, so I added a little bit up into the sky, just to have a little bit more of like a dynamic aspect to it. Now the bison in the background, they're going to be a little more faded back, because what I'm going for again is the dust kind of effect. If you ever been out west, North Dakota, Montana, anywhere in the Midwest there in the summertime or early fall, you're going to see some dry ground, and just cars or anything driving across, you're going to see dust flying everywhere. And if you've ever had the pleasure of being in front of bison during that time of year, you're going to see a lot of dust, and it's just incredible. Especially if you get out like maybe August for their rut. So I got the first layer done here. I'm going back in, making the colors a little more opaque, fixing up a few issues that I've had along the way. Here's just a list of some of the different colors on my palette right now. My colors for the most part are going to be a little bit on the muted side, so there's going to be it's going to be on the minimal side as far as some of these vibrant colors, but I am using them a little bit, especially in the washes. So if you've ever been out west, you're going to notice a theme. Magpies and bison kind of go hand in hand. You're going to see them quite often together. So my goal for this whole painting was just to add the two together in a dynamic kind of aspect, focusing more on the magpies, but have that just that edge of the bison coming in. You can just feel the tension. So slowly starting to add in some of the details here in the bison. Starting to add in a little bit of colors. And just trying to get that attitude in their face. Slowly but surely. So one cool thing about the bison, if you didn't know, they are the largest mammal weight-wise in North America. The bulls can get up to 2,000 pounds. That's incredible. And what's even more incredible is the fact that they are extremely fast when they want to be. They can actually outrun a horse at 35 miles an hour. That's just insane. So these magpies know exactly what they're doing. They got to get out of the way. So I'm working on the highlights a little bit here. Working in some different shapes that I'm finding. That's the fundamentals of the whole thing, building off of the shapes. And I'm just hitting some certain highlights that are a little bit bigger and really come to eye when you look at the reference photos I'm looking at. So we're working on the leg here, and as I'm going down, I'm fading out those dark tones so I can set into place the dust eventually here. And as I'm going back through with the body, I'm getting less and less details, less and less bright colors, and it's starting to, I'm trying to fade my colors into more of a orangey brown tone, like you're seeing in the back bison here. And another thing I'm trying to keep in mind as I'm doing this is I don't want the darkest darks on the bison to be as dark as the magpie in the front. You got to set that apart, that way those magpies really stand out in the end and they're not conflicting against the bison there. So now we're going to work on the bison on the other side. It's not going to be quite as far back as the one on the left. So we're going to kind of cut that detail in half and then still had a little bit of color to it, a little more color than we have on the bison on the left at least. So now I'm working on the dust in the background here. Bison are so awesome in the rut season, as you can see in this picture here. And the next one coming, these are examples of when the rut comes around, they're chasing the cows around, they get into these big fights, and dust is flying everywhere. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for here, just trying to get that really cool effect of the dust coming up and losing your visibility. And what my goal is here is as I'm pushing in these dust tones and coming up over the bison with some of the dust, that's going to set out the magpies even more. The fact that the magpies are such vibrant colors and they have such contrasty colors, that's really going to set them out. So it's about the perfect setup for what I'm really wanting to do anyway. For this, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So speed isn't everything. Don't pile it all in one layer. Just keep building it up, enjoy it, but pay attention to the warms and the cool tones as you're going. This little guy here, he's starting to get a little attitude in his face. You can start to see he means business. One really cool fact about bison are they actually use that big old shovel head as a plow in the wintertime, and they'll actually push snow out with that. It's incredible what they can do, and the raw power is just insane. So putting in some highlights here in the face, the horns, little tufts of hair. We're going to add in a little bit of warm tones to set this off a little bit. We don't want all the color to be just in the sky, so we have to kind of balance that off a little bit. And if you're really paying attention to the pictures, like reference photos of bison, they have so many warm tones across their backs. Their faces are a little darker and there's a lot more cooler tones in the face, but as you work back into the body, you're starting to see some warms. since this bison in the background is pushed a little bit further back, I'm going to add a little bit of some cool tones to it just to make it recede a little bit. I don't want to get too crazy with it, but just enough that it reads as a little further back. Naturally your warm tones will come forward, your cooler tones will go back. I'm going to add in some details here, the folds of the hair or where the creases are, but subtly. I'm not going to go in and do a whole bunch of details. I'm using a wider brush. I'm trying to limit myself as to how deep I can go because I have a big habit of pushing things further than they should be. I'm going through and just adding a little body in the back here just so you get to feel that there's another bison back behind and there's just more depth into that. I'm adding some dust underneath the legs, less details, more dust. I'm going to bounce over to the bison here on the left, and actually I'm backtracking a little bit because I didn't like what I was starting out here on this bison. So I'm going back in, I'm changing how it looks. And that's how it goes though. It's sometimes you don't know what it's going to look like until it actually hits that canvas. Sometimes you just say, hey, it's not working for me. So that's what happened here. And so I got it blocked in again, and I decided to put another bison here, but as you can see, I'm bouncing ideas around, and I ended up deciding that I want a rear end of one. I don't need another head in the painting here. I just want another body. So going back in, touching some more things up on the back end of the main bison on the front, and just trying to add in some subtle details on the foreground, to complement the dust, but I don't want to get too crazy. A little bit of vegetation, a few rocks just to pop out through it. But if you're paying attention to reference photos, you're not going to see a whole lot of that when you're looking through the dust. You're trying to keep it on the low end. And now I'm coming in with a little bit of sagebrush, but I'm going to try not to focus much on the sagebrush as I'm going through this painting. I want the magpies to stand out beyond that and just have some subtle little details that kind of just make the viewer know that that's what it is, but not go crazy with it. And because it's down low, I'm trying to keep the tones kind of more natural colored and not a whole lot of pops of color to it. So now I can finally start approaching these magpies in the foreground here. I'm trying to get those darks on here to kind of set them off a little bit. Magpies are so pretty. They have some amazing translucent colors all through their feathers. If you're watching them, just if they slightly turn their feathers, they just have these really amazing color shifts and changes. So I'm trying to capture that a little bit. A lot of people out west especially, they really think they're a nuisance bird. I think they're beautiful. They're amazing birds. They can be a nuisance, I suppose, but I kind of fall on the other end of it. I just think they're really cool. So I'm just going through, and I'm just blocking in. This is basically my second layer on the magpie, so nothing too crazy. I'm just going back through and hitting the colors again, making them more opaque, stand out, and eventually I'm going to go back in and hit the details again. So as I'm painting, I'm trying to work from the background forward. That's not always how it goes, as you could see earlier when I worked on that bison on the background. So I'm gonna go back in now. I'm working on the foreground a little bit on the bison. I'm trying to capture these details. Bison are incredibly difficult to capture all those little flicks of fur coming out of the face, and I'm still working on that. It's something I'll probably always be intrigued by. Uh, there's just so much character in their faces, and that's my goal, is to nail that. And you can leave a comment below if you think I did or didn't. Let's let me know what your thoughts are. So I'm going in here. I am getting those highlights on the face, trying to make him stand out. I want him to look like he's about ready to plow those things over. Now I'm not putting as many details as I normally would on this bison's face, so I'm trying to capture what it's going to look like through a little bit of dust, or if I'm taking a photo, focus on something else with that in the background, that kind of a deal. So I'm getting down in the legs a little bit and bouncing around, but coming back in for some more highlights. More highlights on the bison in the background. Not a whole lot left on hit. I definitely don't want to really be pushing those details a whole lot more. And I'm going to get there on the one on the left in the background too a little bit. Doesn't need a whole lot because it's so far back. And now we're back at the Magpies again. So I'm just working in some of the lines on the feathers. You know, some of the cooler tones are going to be in here too, in the shady areas, and I'm going to have some warm tones popping out too. I'm now to the point where I've got a very small liner brush, actually, is what I'm using. It's kind of neat when in the fall or in the wintertime, it seems like the magpies will flock up. You'll see, I've seen hundreds of them at a time, and it's just something to see. It's neat. They're such a beautiful bird, especially when the light's hitting them. And for me, I don't always see them, so when I see a group like that, it just gets me all giddy, although a lot of things make me giddy. Some of those teal colors on those wings. What a blast this painting has been. I sure do enjoy, especially creating something that I haven't seen on a photograph, something that's been on my mind for a while and I've been tossing around. I can finally take it to fruition. And no matter how many sketches you're going to do, you're still going to be surprised at the total outcome of the whole thing. So, same with this. I'm quite pleased with how it's coming along. So for me, my favorite stages of a painting are the very beginning, when everything's just getting blocked in and shaped in, and then the very end where the details are getting finished up and you can kind of see where this whole thing is going. So right now I'm at the final stages. just hitting a few highlights, touching up a few things that I think might be tweaked a little bit, add a little bit of details, trying to make this sagebrush a little more convincing. Put some blue tones and also some warmer tones in there. And I thought it'd be more interesting to throw, a piece of old dried up sagebrush or a piece of wood or something. I've got some small pieces of clods of dirt there laying. Birds are starting to look nice. Wrapping up the details of the magpies wings. Taking that liner brush and making the crispest lines I possibly can on the edge of those wings or the face, anything on those magpies. I'm trying to make them stand out with thin, crisp lines. Highlights on the side really makes them set off too. Okay, we're just wrapping it up here. Finishing up a few highlights. Bounce around just a little bit. And we're gonna call it finished. You guys enjoyed it.